It was discovered at that time Terry Bollea, also known as Hulk Hogan, was experiencing a serious medical-related issue. Personnel provided medical treatment at that time and transported Mr. Bollea to Morton Plant Hospital, where he died at 11:17 a.m.
The FBI didn't expect a crime scene, they expected closure. But what they found inside Hulk Hogan's mansion that night rewrote everything they thought they knew. The world believed he'd died a hero's death, a heart attack, alone at home. Yet buried beneath that story were traces of something far darker.
Breaking news, and we're hearing just in the last few minutes that the professional wrestling and entertainment star Hulk Hogan has died.
An untraceable call made hours before he collapsed, security footage that vanished, and a locked chamber no one knew existed. When agents finally forced it open, what they uncovered shocked everyone. The day a legend fell. It began like any other day. The Florida sun slipped gently through the blinds of Hulk Hogan's Clearwater mansion, lighting the room where one of wrestling's greatest icons started every morning. For decades, this routine had been his anchor. Up before dawn, protein shake in hand, stretching out the body that built a global empire. Friends said he was in good spirits that morning, even joking with his trainer about getting back in shape for one last run. Nothing hinted at tragedy. After breakfast, Hogan made a few quick phone calls. His assistant later recalled a short conversation about a fan event planned for the following month, followed by a call to his daughter, Brooke. He sounded fine, she would later tell reporters. Tired, maybe, but okay. Then came the call that no one could have predicted. A sudden silence on the other end of the line, replaced by the thud of something heavy hitting the floor. Within minutes, chaos filled the once peaceful mansion. Paramedics arrived to find the 71-year-old collapsed near his private gym, unresponsive and without a pulse. Family members stood frozen, watching as first responders worked frantically to revive him. The air was thick with disbelief. How could a man known for his strength, who survived decades of punishing fights in the ring, now lie helpless in his own home? He was rushed to Morton Plant Hospital, where doctors pronounced him dead at 11:17 that morning. The official statement from authorities was short and clinical. Cause of death: acute myocardial infarction. In plain terms, a heart attack. But the truth ran deeper. Beneath the heart failure lay leukemia and atrial fibrillation, silent battles he had fought for years while projecting strength to the world. The news broke before noon, and within hours, the internet was on fire. Headlines screamed, fans wept, wrestlers posted tributes, and disbelief rippled across generations who had grown up shouting his name. Outside his Clearwater home, candles and flowers began to pile up. Reporters swarmed the gates, searching for answers, but the only response from officials remained the same: a simple statement of loss, leaving behind a world full of questions. The first red flags. At first, the world accepted the official story: a sudden heart attack. It seemed simple enough. A 71-year-old man, decades of physical strain behind him, gone too soon. But within days, that neat explanation began to unravel. The first doubts came from inside Hogan's own home. His daughter, Brooke, was among the first to speak out. "My dad was getting stronger," she told a local reporter through tears. "He'd been walking again after surgery, eating clean, training light. He wasn't sick." Close friends echoed her disbelief, saying Hogan had been upbeat and focused on recovery from a neck operation just weeks earlier. They described a man regaining his rhythm, not one on the edge of a fatal collapse. To them, the heart attack label felt like a quick conclusion, not an answer. Then came the silence from the hospital itself. When journalists pressed for more details about the medical treatment leading up to his death, Clearwater General declined to comment, citing patient confidentiality. Even routine requests for clarification The attending doctor's name, the nature of the surgery, or the list of medications prescribed went unanswered. That silence only fueled suspicion. The media pounced. Within 48 hours, headlines began to shift from tribute to tension. One outlet claimed Hogan had experienced post-surgical complications that were downplayed. Another suggested he was privately consulting alternative practitioners for pain management. A third cited unnamed sources hinting at a medical disagreement between his family and staff. Each new report contradicted the last, and confusion spread like wildfire. Online, fans started connecting dots that didn't quite fit. If Hogan was recovering, why was he alone that morning? Why had no one noticed earlier signs of distress? And why, as one journalist pointed out, did the official medical report list cardiac arrest without mentioning any contributing conditions? What began as grief was turning into suspicion, which sparked an avalanche of speculation. Was there more to Hogan's passing than a simple heart attack? Was the truth being carefully hidden? A story that once felt closed was cracking open. The people closest to Hogan were no longer mourning quietly. They were demanding answers. And beneath the public condolences and polished statements, whispers of something deeper had begun. Something that didn't look like natural causes at all. The launch of an investigation. When the dust of grief began to settle, law enforcement took over, stepping quietly but firmly into the limelight. A search warrant was swiftly executed on Hogan's Clearwater residence just days after his death, signaling a deeper probe into the wrestler's sudden demise. Detectives, clad in determination, scoured the home for anything that might shed light on the truth behind the headlines. Every corner of the property was meticulously examined. Investigators collected medical records, dietary supplements, and any other substances that might explain an unexpected cardiac arrest. Phones were confiscated, phone records analyzed, and even the home security footage scrutinized. Everything, including the smallest detail, could hold a key. In parallel, the medical examiner's autopsy confirmed death by cardiac arrest. Yet beneath the surface of this finding were subtle indications that commanded further inquiry. The presence of medical implants, traces of nerve damage, and complex medication profiles hinted at a story far from straightforward. For investigators, the challenge was balancing respect for a beloved public figure and the need for absolute truth. The forensic review was thorough, peeling back layers that the public never saw. Was it natural causes? Or was there something lurking in the medical or personal history of Hulk Hogan that would point to neglect, undisclosed health risks, or worse? The answers remained elusive, but one thing was clear. The official story was not the final chapter. Inside the lair of a legend. The world of Hogan was a private one, but as detectives ventured deeper into his life after his demise, the physical remnants of his life painted a complicated picture of decline and concealment. His once formidable in-house gym was a stark contrast to the powerhouse arena where he forged his career. An eerie silence settled on equipment that had clearly been used less frequently than before. Workout plans lay unfinished, half-written goals abandoned. These signs spoke not just of a man whose routines were disrupted, but of a sudden and unsettling shift in lifestyle. But that was not the only unsettling part. The whole workout room was too perfect and too convenient. Almost like someone had taken the time to make it look that way. Was there a reason for this? Or was this a very good attempt to hide something the cops shouldn't see? And while this happened, it was another room in the house that stole the spotlight. Beneath the main activity of the main house was a secret room where the most startling discovery awaited. A locked room, long concealed from even the closest family members, was finally uncovered. This secret chamber housed more than just memorabilia. It was a repository for private journals, intimate letters, and detailed medication logs. Meticulously arranged by dates were files that could have been placed there by Hogan himself or by someone else, perhaps someone who knew the house too well and worked on Hogan's orders, or someone who had something to hide. But medical records by date were not the only things found here. Along with private journals were undisclosed records of private matters that Hogan may have been involved in. Was he keeping them away from family, or was Hogan hiding them away so they don't end up in the wrong hands? Either way, the authorities classified several of the items as undisclosed items of interest, hinting at secrets Hogan might have been hiding from the world and perhaps from himself. The existence of these hidden possessions raised many questions. Why guard such a room so closely? Was Hogan protecting a legacy or shielding darker, more vulnerable truths? The narrative of the invincible wrestler began to crack, revealing a man wrestling with unseen battles. And as investigators pieced together these locked-away fragments, the mystery deepened. What was Hulk Hogan really facing behind closed doors? And could this secret room hold the key to understanding the man beyond the myth? Fractures behind the fame. Family can be our greatest strength and support, or they could be our worst nightmare. In the months leading up to Hogan's death, whispers of emotional distance and strained relationships began to surface from those closest to him. Despite his larger-than-life persona in the wrestling arena, behind closed doors, the reality was far more fragile. Family insiders revealed growing tension, particularly between Hogan and certain family members. His daughter's candid disclosures cast a dark shadow over the household, emphasizing her father's mounting stress and an especially heated argument focused on issues of trust and safety. What was the underlying cause of this strife? Was the legendary wrestler grappling with fears no one outside his immediate circle could comprehend? For someone who had been married multiple times, it was possible that all was not well with him in his romantic and personal life. During his first marriage to Linda Claridge, the world believed their love would last forever. But after 2 children and 24 years later, Hogan split from his first wife in 2009 in what would be a messy public divorce that left both parties scarred. But this split did not just end a marriage, it drained Hogan's finances and broke his spirit. The next year, Hogan found love again with Jennifer McDaniel and married her. But unfortunately, that did not end well, and it ended just like the first one did, after years of tension. Unwilling to give up on love, Hogan gave it one more try with Sky Daly, his current wife at the time of his death, a woman he described as his peace, his fresh beginning, and his third chance. But on the grave of previous failed relationships, Hogan's marriage to Sky was not well received by his family. While fate dealt him a bad hand in love, his relationship with his children was the most pitiful. Once inseparable, Hogan and his children gradually grew apart over the years, and his daughter particularly, having the worst of it when she challenged his decisions and his latest marriage to Sky. A loving father-daughter relationship eroded over time and was reduced to tense calls and distant exchanges. Yet all of that could not be compared to the blow that came after his death. His only daughter, Brooke, had been cut off completely from his will and her inheritance. All of Hogan's assets and estates, totaling $5 million, were willed to his only son and sole heir. While their relationship may have turned sour, Brooke's love for her father was never in doubt, as she stated in a private interview. But the world would soon see how agitated and paranoid Hogan became just before his death. Numbered days of panic. He was one of the strongest and most fearless wrestlers of the 1980s, but in the months leading up to his death, he became a shadow of himself and lived in fear and paranoia. According to records from families and close friends, Hogan went from confident and bubbly to a secretive and agitated man who suspected everyone and believed everybody wanted to control him. The family and allies he held onto as his greatest strength and support became a source of mistrust and pain in his last days. What was really going on behind the scenes? And what would make him turn away from his support system? Transitioning from the complicated family dynamics, the focus now shifts to an equally confounding aspect of Hogan's final days: the maze of medical care that surrounded him. Between healing and harm. 2 months before his tragic death, Hogan underwent a neck operation, reportedly to repair nerve damage that had plagued him for some time. A high-risk cervical discectomy and fusion neck surgery that was supposed to relieve compression on his nerves and help with the pain he still carried from his days of wrestling. But what should have been a straightforward treatment turned into a confusing tangle of conflicting accounts. Hogan suffered damage to his phrenic nerve, a situation that caused difficulties in swallowing and breathing. In a young person's body, this damage would probably not have meant so much. However, Hogan was not young anymore, and his aged body had already been riddled with years of wear and tear, and dozens of surgeries. Some medical staff involved hinted at complications post-surgery, while others outright denied any issues, leaving investigators caught in a swirl of contradictions. What really transpired in those sterile hospital corridors? A painstaking investigation uncovered a troubling trove among Hogan's belongings: painkillers, unlabeled vials, and various supplements. Experts cross-referenced these substances with prescriptions and hospital records, raising red flags about potential misuse or even dangerous combinations. The discovery fueled speculation that his death might not have been due to natural causes or injury alone. Adding to the complexity, Hogan's family sought more time to investigate the possibility of medical malpractice. Was there negligence involved? Could the operation or the post-surgery care have inadvertently accelerated his deterioration? Even worse, could the damage to his phrenic nerve have contributed to breathing difficulties that led to his heart attack? As authorities sifted through medical documents and interviewed healthcare providers, a haunting question lingered. Had Hogan's pursuit of physical recovery embroiled him in a deadly medical labyrinth no one anticipated? The boundaries between care and harm blurred, setting the stage for the next pivotal moment: the mysterious phone call that could hold the key to his final hours. The call that changed everything. Amid the tangled threads of this saga, one phone call emerged as a critical piece of the puzzle. Investigators traced the final call to Hogan's phone just 3 days before his death. A call that lasted less than a minute but may have changed everything. Who was on the other end? What was said in those fleeting seconds? Witnesses stepped forward, recalling Hogan's demeanor immediately after the call. According to his wife, Hogan became uncharacteristically unsettled, a sharp contrast to the usually composed image he maintained. Friends who knew him well described a glimpse of vulnerability rarely seen. As authorities dug deeper, audio analysts examined voicemail messages left on his phone around that time for any hint of threats or blackmail. Was this call a cry for help, a warning, or an exchange that confirmed the presence of a shadowy threat? Yet the chilling part of that call that lingered was the fact that it could not be tracked. Whoever it was had gone through great lengths to cover his tracks and make sure he was never found. Then came the question on people's lips. What was so confidential that it was meant only for Hogan's ears? The fact that the call remains shrouded in secrecy only fuels speculation. Some suggest it involved a business dispute spiraling out of control. Others suspect a more personal matter, possibly linked to Hogan's health, or someone exploiting his vulnerabilities. Whatever the truth, the ramifications of this call ripple through the narrative, pulling in every piece of Hogan's troubled past and present. With this haunting enigma at the heart of the story, public fascination only intensified, drawing attention to the legend's hidden struggles. Myths, fear, and reality. In the wake of Hogan's death, fans and followers around the world erupted into a frenzy, dissecting every available detail. Online forums flooded with theories and questions alike. Did steroids play a role? Were there financial troubles or unseen enemies from his wrestling days that finally caught up with him? The chatter became a virtual courtroom where every suspicion and rumor was debated fiercely. Media outlets capitalized on the intrigue, scouring Hogan's final interviews and social media posts. While his upbeat online presence painted a picture of a man at peace, insiders suggested a more isolating reality behind the scenes, a stark contradiction that only deepened the tragedy. Analysts noted subtle hints of paranoia and fear in his last recorded words, tokens of a man grappling with forces beyond the public eye. But as the public pieced together fragments of the narrative, they confronted the uncomfortable truth about the cost of fame and the fragility beneath the Hulkamania mythos. Was Hogan's heroic image merely a mask for darker battles? The legend unraveled not in the thunderous cheers of the arena, but in the silence of private anguish and unanswered mysteries. The brick wall of evidence. After weeks of intense investigation, the Clearwater Police Department and forensic teams had assembled a mountain of evidence. The picture that emerged was not of a dramatic murder, but of a far more complex and frustrating puzzle. The first and most definitive finding was the state of the Hogan estate itself. Forensic analysts confirmed there was absolutely no sign of forced entry. Every window and door was secured from the inside. There were no indications of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no defensive wounds on Hogan's body, nothing to suggest an intruder had breached the home. This single fact effectively dismantled the theory of a direct physical attack. The fortress, it seemed, had been compromised from within, not from without. But this forced the investigation to turn inwards, to the substances found within Hogan's system. The official cause of death remained cardiac arrest, but the toxicology report added a critical layer of complexity. It confirmed the presence of prescribed painkillers, consistent with his recent surgery. However, the report also noted elevated levels of certain compounds that raised immediate red flags among investigators. The concern was not necessarily the presence of the drugs, but their potential dosage and interaction. Could a slight miscalculation in self-administration or a dangerous synergy between his prescription medication and the unlabeled supplements found in his home have placed an intolerable strain on his heart? The official reports are careful, but they explicitly state that a medical error, either through accidental misuse or a flawed prescription plan, could not be ruled out. This was not a conclusion, but a doorway into a new realm of possibility, one that pointed toward negligence rather than malice. Yet, one piece of the puzzle refused to fit, creating a persistent dissonance in the investigation's narrative: the last phone call. The 60-second conversation from a burner phone and the witness account of Hogan's unsettled demeanor immediately afterwards remained a glaring loose end. It was an anomaly that the clean physical evidence of the scene could not explain. Who calls a global icon from an untraceable phone days before his death? The official investigation, bound by hard evidence, could not incorporate this phone call into its final ruling. As a result, the official public conclusion stood, for now, as heart attack. But internally, the case was far from closed. Investigators formally recommended two paths for further inquiry: an expanded, more sophisticated toxicological analysis to pinpoint the exact role of the drugs in his system, and deep background checks into every individual associated with his medical care and his inner circle in the weeks leading to his death. The brick wall of evidence was solid, but the whispers from the shadows, represented by that single untraceable call, suggested a truth that was still hiding in plain sight. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.